Welcome to the CRE podcast, 100% Canadian, 100% commercial real estate. Now, here are your hosts, Aaron Cameron and Adam Pawatic.
Welcome to this week's edition of Conversations in QA with industry leaders, our think-ins. I'm Aaron Cameron. With me, as always, Adam Pawatic, who are, as you may be familiar, the host of the Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Our guest today is an individual by the name of Daniel Marinovich. He is the CEO and managing partner of Forest Gate, which is a sort of a newly created private equity, private debt firm. So we're kind of interested to have this conversation today with Daniel, just to talk about, what it's like coming into the industry or starting a new entity within the industry, and just what that process looks like. Daniel's got to clearly, you don't just pick up and start a private equity, private debt firm with no experience. So of course, it's got a long history of experience in our industry, and we're gonna talk about that and talk about how it translates into such a opportunity for you to start with Forest Gate. So Daniel, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you coming to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate the interest.
So, Daniel, we always do this. We always look backwards first. Let's establish, what your history is like and what your expertise is. So maybe just take us back to how and why you got into commercial real estate in the first place.
Oh, that goes way back. Sure. That's interesting. And I wasn't expecting to go that far back, but for me, real estate was always an interest. I didn't really put two and two together about the larger commercial real estate industry until I was in business school, and the light bulb just kind of went off. I always thought of real estate in the conventional sense, buying and selling houses and trading in the residential sphere. And then the light bulb, like I said, just kind of went off while taking a course and while doing my MBA. And I thought, this is exactly what I have to get into. I started my career early on the brokerage side, primarily doing investments. I have a background in finance, accounting, and the bit, so I was focusing in on bigger portfolio investment sales, that kind of stuff, and then which then parlayed into a longer career, more specifically on the development side. All in now, I'm about 20 years in the business. Spent about half of my career with a company called First Gulf, part of the Great Gulf Group of companies, and then half of my career with Dream, in both capacities, focusing more on the development side of the business.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You kind of glossed over you with Dream. I mean, you were the chief development officer when you left, which is a pretty great accomplishment in its own right. But I have always said that all, or maybe close to all, maybe not all, but most real estate people, when they're in large institutions, do have a little daydream about going out and doing their own baby, their own thing. And you've done that, and you left a great company from a great role. So can we talk a little bit about the decision making went into that? The leap of faith. For sure. I'm
not glossing over anything at all. I mean, I've been incredibly blessed to have had just wonderful mentors and to work with incredible teams over the course of my career. As I mentioned, the first half with the folks at First Gulf, we were really pioneering a lot of merchant development work at that time, and doing a lot of transit-oriented development, suburban office, adaptive reuse, the Toronto Sun building, East Harbour, and the whole bit. The early days I was involved with the Global Mail Center, and then that kind of morphed into the latter half of my career when I was at Dream, working with Michael and with tremendous people. And you're absolutely correct. Dream, it's an incredible institution doing incredible things, and things with tremendous social impact and touch right across in municipalities right across the country. And so my portfolio was pretty broad based, and I saw a lot. And I think that over the course of my career, I've been blessed to have seen a lot, and a lot of diversity, whether it's large master plan communities, housing, retail, commercial, affordable housing, big remediation projects, super tall towers. So it's really been a wide and deep career over the last number of years. And I don't think it's a daydream really per se in terms of, people in institutions and the like, and, dreaming about setting shop and the whole bit. To tell you the truth, I think the pandemic was a game changer for a lot of people. And I don't think that those in more senior positions are exempt from that. And I can tell you over the course of the summer, I think I started to look at myself, and to be very blunt and honest, I think that I think the vast majority of people were kind of have looked at themselves to say, like, where exactly am I in my life, in my career, and what stages, and what, how am I going to live my life moving forward, and the whole bit. What am I going to be doing? Am I living my, what can I offer? Am I doing it with purpose and the whole bit? And to be blunt, I think for me personally, it was about recognizing where I was and, what skills and experiences I've been able to gather over the years, and, what direction I was going to be able to put them into. And for myself, it was wanting to work alongside more developers and to bring the experiences that I've seen in the years that, and in my travels in the markets that I've been in, to help them. And then on the flip side, to work with investors to also provide comfort and security in and around their investments, primarily on the equity side for developments, as the appetite for yield is growing, increasingly more competitive. So that was really the genesis of it. And I would say that in the earliest days of none of us have crystal balls in around this pandemic, but there was just something that I could say to you that I kind of felt it was going to go on for a lot longer than it would shorter. And I felt as though the knee jerk was going to be into the periphery, and that the people that were doing work in outside of the urban core would be benefiting quite a bit. I just didn't know to what extent. And I think that it's been proven out. And I do have a feeling that it's going to continue on for some time. The foundations are there for it to continue on for some time.
Daniel, I think there's a lot of our viewers and listeners that are always trying to plan out their careers in some form or fashion. Adam and I know different, of course. And you were well positioned, right, at your role at Dream. You probably had created a platform or a springboard to go in multiple directions. One direction could have been, more institutional. From an Oxford or a Brookfield or some more of a global, management investment strategy sort of employment opportunity. And or, of course, the direction that you went, which is more sort of niche, smaller, entrepreneurial. Did you always know kind of deep inside it was to go entrepreneurial and kind of run your own shop, kind of not be your own boss, but kind of, start something from the ground up? Or did you have to balance that? Like, do I want to go, big, major global institution, or do I want to go, the direction that you ultimately chose?
That's a great and a very existential question for sure. I've seen both sides. So I would say that, the first Gulf that, now in 2021, with the work that's been done with East Harbor and a lot of their other developments and the whole bit. I think that when I was there, it was a far smaller, nimbler, and kind of more intimate type of shop. And then I've seen the other side where it's, worked in multiple markets right across the country and led teams and incredible people and the whole bit. I think that, if you're asking me from a personal perspective, yeah, I think that there's a magic in being in a sort of a more intimate setting with people who have similar experiences that you do. And within the partnership group, I've reconnected with some folks who I've done some incredible work with over the years as well. And so for me at this juncture in my life, that was one that was more attractive. And second, I would say that I've kind of been somebody that's never strayed away from challenges personally. And there was just something about the challenge of starting something from scratch, which was really appealing to me. And which is something that I just kind of wanted to, which is something I wanted to take on and feel as though I was able to do it. I think it's a real test to yourself personally to kind of really make yourself, to be something in a kind of a vulnerable state to some extent, and go and give it a shot.
Yeah, nice, a great answer, and I just find that question so fascinating. Adam and I are fortunate enough to work for a company that's still entrepreneurial. Two private owners effectively, but we're big, right? We've, over 1,000 employees and, hundreds of billions of dollars under administration. I've yet to ever come across a situation where the answer to why can't I do that is, well, that's just our policy, which I suspect as you get into larger and larger and larger organizations, you hit that red tape where there's just no way to make pragmatic decisions because you're stuck with just policy. And I'm maybe reading between the lines of what you just said, but going the other direction, which you've done, you make your own policy, and those pragmatic decisions aren't questioned because there is, nobody else to question them ultimately. So I probably align with you in that respect. Ella.
I just add to that. I'd say that I'd say that Dream for sure is not that type of organization. It was started by a founder with a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial vision, and who's embedded that into every person that's there. In addition to fostering a culture of respect and doing good. So I think that if anything, for me, it was almost like my cup was too full. I think it was like, okay, where do I go and take that now, right? And so to answer your question, I don't think that alignment would have been with another institution. I think that going back to what I was saying originally, it's kind of going, well, how can I help ABC builder who may have a great project, who may be starting up, who may be doing some interesting things, and how do we take him to the next level and make sure that he's delivering on or he or she or is delivering on it accordingly.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good point to make, Daniel, because Adam and I have been lucky enough to interview Michael Cooper before, and I totally get, and I've seen him on panels, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that guy just bleeds entrepreneurialism, right? Like, he's never going to start creating policy for the sake of policy. So I totally get that. So you've been kind of, raised in that environment. So I'm not surprised you're kind of attracted to doing your own thing. And Adam and I probably align with you on that. The next question, and just for our listeners, like, we're going to get to investment thesis. I think we're kind of heading there now, and just kind of what the strategy of Forest and what it is that you're really trying to do. Daniel, before we get into the investment thesis and just kind of the strategy of going forward, maybe just talk about the formation of what you've created and how did it come about? Like, I mean, like you said, you were clearly attracted to going sort of an entrepreneurial route. Just pick up the phone and start calling people, or was it kind of happenstance? What was the story behind you ending up with your partners and the investment group that you've now created? How did you all kind of find each other?
I mean, it's a great question. So I would say, it was something that's been percolating since the start of the pandemic. You talk about an investment thesis. It was kind of more an investment awareness, I'd say. I'd say that, as I mentioned, I just felt as though that this activity in the periphery was going to be, it was going to be growing, and I kind of wanted to get ahead of it. I think what hit me like a ton of bricks was I heard the term K-shaped recovery for the first time. I'd never heard that term before. I think it was Steve Pelosi or we brought it up somewhere, and it's kind of like, if you look at the textbook definition, it's like some companies will thrive, or individuals will thrive, and some will take a little bit longer. But it's kind of like some are going to actually survive and some are going to die too, right? And I think that, for myself, I was thinking about it, saying like on what side of that K do I want to be relative, and where do I see things going? So started canvassing the market, which, whether you're just starting out in your career or if you're going through a same transition, or if you're just trying to get perspective. I mean, I'd be encouraging people as they're home and using this time accordingly to do it, and came across, as I mentioned, some old colleagues that, had the same sort of perspective in terms of where they felt the economy was going, and identified a certain need that was in the market. So we really just put our heads together and figured out a venture and a structure between us that we thought could work. And we see, the initial response has been very strong. And, we hope to service a certain point in the market. All of us have significant experience in the development realm. And on the placement side, I would say it helps us to be more nimble and strategic. And then also on the servicing side, it helps us to make sure that we're effective and that we're delivering the results that we say that we're going to deliver at the end of the day as well. That was basically the high level kind of genesis of it. Yeah, I think that's kind of that's how we ended up where we're at today.
I think you've already partially dipped your toe into the investment thesis part of the enterprise, but let's jump right into it, because now you have this group of qualified people. You've got the will and the resources, and you're putting wheels in motion. What's the big idea? You're about to stake your reputation and your future on this. So what is the big idea? What's the investment thesis here? No pressure. I don't mean to dial it up.
I better not screw that up, or else I got to put my, I got to get my resume out there. Look, I think it's an example of one of those things where we've all got to be looking at the bigger picture in terms of what's going on right now. Like, I think that, like, mine or our personal view is that there's a big rebound story, and it's for our province. I think that it's kind of to be cliche about it, it's kind of a magical time for our region, to be pretty frank about it. I mean, you have a combination of, historical infrastructure investment. I mean, the Ontario government just announced their budget. They've got $100 billion next year for priority projects, including, things like the Hamilton light rail and connectivity. They're planning out how to get rail networks up to North Bay and another kind of, townships accordingly. You've got, after a delayed pause over the course of 2020, when we had the lowest immigration growth levels, we're picking right back up. And I think that we've committed to something like 1.5 million immigrants over the next 3 years. I mean, it's a massive amount of people that are going to be coming back into the country. In January, we've already seen that we started to achieve more of a normalized kind of pre-pandemic number that's there. Got big policy changes that are happening or expedite planning decisions, such as MZOs. I mean, they're controversial, but they're not just for residential project, but also for transportation, for industrial, so on and so forth, to get permits into the market faster. Right now, I think Canada is something like 64th in the world, according to OECD, in terms of getting an average industrial permit into the ground and the whole bit. So, and then on the planning side too, the municipalities. And again, this kind of parlays into work that I've seen over the years. I mean, there's in greenfield developments, we're seeing the emphasis on better planning. I mean, you point out to something like what's going on in Innisfil right now with Orbit as an example that Partisans is doing. I mean, it's incredible. When I saw it for the first time, I thought it was just like a concept, but no, like it's an actual living, breathing document that people are opining on and trying to get into the market in order to get people to live better and to interact with one another better. And homes are being constructed with better environmental standards and the whole bit. Also, we're seeing there's a lot of debate about what the future is going to look like, and I always feel as though the debate is: are the cities going to make this big comeback, or is everybody going to work from home and stay in the periphery and the like? And I myself and our group just doesn't see it that way. I think that we kind of see that you need both working in parallel, that both are going to be working in parallel, I should say, and that's going to result in more of an exponential growth. So whether or not people are going to come back and how they're going to come back into the offices is to be determined. But I mean, just through venues such as this, I mean, we've shown that people can work remotely. They're going to want to work. They're going to want to maintain some element of it. I mean, there's all kinds of studies and discussion points about what the work week is going to end up looking like in the future and the like. But people have been migrating to towns as well. I mean, we've been tracking the amount of people that have left Toronto per se, but they're not even tracking the people that have left from a Brampton or from a Pickering or the like, have gone into other places as well. So there's migration that's happening, and this entrenchment that's happening as well throughout the city, all of which I would say points into that strengthening into our region. Massive amounts of savings. And right now, over the course of the last year, I don't know, it was like $100 billion or something like that in additional savings that have been realized by Canadian families. It's been a massive increase in disposable income. There's the transfer of wealth that's going to end up happening from the baby boomers and the like. So I would say that all these things lay out this incredible foundation, and together with vaccine optimism and, God willing, we'll see when the budget rolls out in a couple of weeks with good government policy and the like. I think we're in for a pretty significant. We have the makings for a very significant boom for the long term, and we're hoping that's what ends up happening.
This is one of my favorite conversations, Daniel. So let's keep going. I have two questions for you. One's really easy.
I bet you say that's all.
Yeah. No, honestly. One's really, I think this is one of the most interesting conversations we can have in the commercial real estate community right now, and we'll get there. The first question is not necessarily on that. First question is, what's MZO or MZO? I don't know what that is. Can you just explain that to us?
Yeah. So it's a zoning order basically where the province can expedite. There has to be alignment. I mean, it's been controversial because it's been used to some extent to expedite development projects, but in other uses, it's also been used to expedite, GO stations and affordable housing projects and industrial and the bits. So it's not something that should necessarily be seen as a negative, but rather as a recognition that we need to be getting things to market quicker. So again, when you talk about the investment thesis, look, going into the pandemic, everything was tight. It's like, I don't even know if people remember February 2020, where rental vacancy was like residential vacancy was like at 0%. Office effectively was at 0%. Industrial was at 0%. You had the housing market was hot, both for single family homes and the condo market and the like. So all these things, like, it makes me feel good that, yeah, look, it's like this pandemic sucks. We're all just sitting here waiting, going like just everyone gets shots in arms. Let's all get back at it and the whole bit. But our fundamentals are pretty good for, to bounce back. But deeper than that, like, there's these big structural things that are happening that are going to help us for the longer term as well. And so, when you kind of really add all these things up, like, it's going to be pretty meaningful. And the biggest thing, I mean, look for on the housing side, I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that doesn't talk about that, the affordability crisis and how expensive it is to live, not just in Toronto, but in the greater region and the whole bit. But big thing is supply. Big thing is just getting the things into market. The big thing is getting through trades that can actually build it and build it on time and on budget and without disruptions like we're having right now in the lumber industry or the Evergreen and the Suez Canal and the whole bit. Like, I mean, these are big fundamental things that when you're running so tight, they're massively disruptive. I mean, like, it's they're all big things for consideration right now.
I think I'm gonna throw a lob ball up there for you to spike home, Daniel. Hopefully I'm doing that. And this is I think the crux of the conversation. And you mentioned it, right? There's this interesting duality now where we've got sort of the work from home cohort and the in office cohort. And I think there's going to be some sort of interesting hybrid. Presumably that sort of accelerates a bit of urban sprawl naturally, right? Because there are people that are moving, and we're seeing it, right? House prices in the 905 are growing way faster than they are in the 416, or suburban areas all across the country are growing more quickly as a result of people saying, I'm just not going to be back in the office nearly as much as I used to. Suburban sprawl historically has been seen as almost a negative, right? Because now you're creating instances where individuals have to commute for an hour and a half or 2 hours each way. They spend 17 hours of their day not in their homes, and the rest of the time, cooking dinner and sleeping. So that's not necessarily what you want in a community. But that work from home environment, if you're working from home and you're in the office 2 days a week, but working from home 3 days a week, you're actually in your community 5 days a week. Even though you might be an hour and a half commute away, you're spending way more time now in that sort of suburban community. So I think I'm giving you a lob ball here. Like, how would you deploy capital then into those communities to really generate yield? And what would you do to make sure that you're fostering the proper investment strategies and generating a strong community?
Oh my God, I'm going to spike this so hard. I'm going to spike this one so hard. What I'd say, coming back to it again, I'd say just in that, if I can unpack that question statement a little bit, when you talk about urban sprawl, as well, like you're making this assumption that 100% of the people are commuting from somewhere outside always to Toronto, right? We're not talking about the people that are going from Kitchener to Milton. We're not talking about the people that are going from Cambridge to Brampton. We're not talking about the people that are going from Peterborough to Pickering. This week they just announced that Brampton is going to have a medical school. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, I grew up in Toronto, downtown Toronto proper, and growing up, you would have never thought that things of that nature would be going on in other municipalities. You only thought of them as being kind of in downtown Toronto. So there's like a big seismic shift. So, from what we're seeing is that there's this maturity that's happening. You've got real regional infrastructure which is taking place. You have a desire, an existential desire of people that are searching for purpose and saying, I'm going to go and be somewhere where I can be on my mountain bike. I can be on my kid's soccer pitch. I like to ski. I like to just go for walks. I like to do whatever it is. If I work in downtown Toronto and I want to live near the Caledon Go, or if I want to live in Wasaga Beach, where it's an hour to get into Toronto and the whole bit, all of this is basically, one big suburb, or it's either a suburb of Toronto proper, or it goes into, the regional discussion where you have the maturity of a lot of these smaller cities and townships that are starting to come of age, which is incredible. And it's actually really good for us. If we want, Toronto's always been this aspirational city that's always looked to in New York and Paris and Berlin and so forth. But, if you're in New York, you can live in Poughkeepsie, you can live in New Haven, you can live in Scranton, you can live in all these places, and you train in and kind of live your life and do what it is that you want to do. But you have that mobility and that sense of infrastructure. And I'd say that here within our region, like, we have incredible green space, we have incredible nature, we've got incredible access to water and leisure and the like. And it's something that I think it's a trend that's going to continue. CMHC this week flagged overheated market in Tillsonburg, and I'm going like why is Tillsonburg even on their radar, right? But people are going there because they may be working in London. It could be medical professionals that are going into the London market and like. So coming back to your question about the returns, the deal sizes are getting bigger. The land acquisitions are more significant. The costing, you have got to really know your costing. As I mentioned to you, I mean, cost of lumber has doubled, depending on when you bought it, but probably over the last 12 months, maybe 2 to 3 times, between all the other components that you've got that you need for a house. It's probably added 20 to 30% on your cost relative to the start of the pandemic. So like anything, I mean, a lot of us, are familiar with Toronto and the rules of thumb in and around, costing, cap rates, ins and outs, and the whole bit. So our focus, we're going to be involved in various asset classes. We're most comfortable, I'd say, in the housing space, and like, so that's where we're going to spend a little bit of our time at the outset, and then as the business naturally matures, start to focus in on other verticals accordingly.
Well, to that point,
did I spike that okay?
Yeah.
Spike that okay? Spike that.
That's actually the lead for the question I wanted to ask you. Yeah. So I buy into the investment thesis that that the growth power of Toronto is driving a 2-hour radius around the actual city core, where we're going to see outsized growth. And for anybody not from the Ontario area, Tillsonburg's an hour and a half from downtown Toronto, and probably most famous 20 years ago for tobacco farming. And they're experiencing a wave of residential value growth. Yeah, exactly. Stop and Tom wrote a song about it. Check out YouTube if you want to hear it. So let's say that I'm here. I'm a day one investor. I believe in the program, but I say to you, look, I want to invest with you day one. I want to invest, year 5, year 10. You mentioned that the immediate plan is to capture it through low-rise residential, but as you grow and the wave continues, how do you plan on continuing to capture that growth and participating in the upside?
On the trends you're talking about, just in terms of adding verticals?
Yeah, verticals specifically.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we're tracking growth, and we're tracking the markets that are growing right now, and rooftops inevitably lead to more growth. And I would say that for myself and the rest of the partners included, we're all fairly well versed in different asset classes. And I don't think that it would take much for us to pivot accordingly. I think it's look, we're in early stages. I mean, it's been a month. I think that I think that we don't want to say that we're involved in everything right off the outset. We're looking at everything, I'd say, but for the time being, I think we're really kind of honing in on equity investments, primarily on the residential side, and then it's going to grow naturally over time, and we'll pivot accordingly.
Before we went record, Daniel sent me a list of things he wanted me to say. So it doesn't sound like I'm just tooting his horn. He was the one that fed me all this information. Hence the lob I gave him to Spike. And what I'm about to say, because Daniel, I'm talking this through or thinking this through as we're having this conversation, and maybe it's obvious, but it didn't seem obvious to me until we started talking about how if you've got communities that used to be predominantly bedroom communities, which is what we used to classify them as, where it was 5 days a week, they were getting up at 5:30 in the morning and jumping in their car or the GO train or whatever, heading downtown. They'd be back home at 8 p.m., make dinner, go to bed, get up in the morning. So you had people living in your communities, but they're only there for 48 hours, the weekend, really, right, from Friday night till Monday morning, and for the most part they're gone. With the work from home environment, with this flexibility that COVID has created, there isn't nearly as much of a draw to send your employees 5 days a week downtown, be at office 8:30, can't leave until 5. So you're going to have these communities now where there's just more people regularly sitting around working, right? But I mean, I think everybody now knows, like, if it's 3:00 and your kids need to go picked up from school, you kind of head out. And now you're out in the car. Okay, well, I'm going to head to the retail center and go do some grocery shopping or go to the ice cream store or whatever it is, right? There's just more activity going on. And I think we all feel it, whether you live in Etobicoke where I live or you live in Tillsonburg, right? So is that ultimately the thesis in a nutshell? And then if you're building homes, I think you said it, you build roofs. And then inevitably, then you need retail communities, you need maybe some small office or whatever, right? Like is that the sort of the 3, 5, 10-year strategy?
Yeah. First of all, I don't recall Sandy anything. Second of all, I'm in Etobicoke. We could have done this in my backyard too. I didn't even know that. Yeah, like when you say thesis, like I'm kind of visioning, like a big chalkboard and a lot of algebra, beautiful mind kind of stuff. And that's what I say. It's kind of a bit of an awareness. I say, yeah, look, for me, like I took up road biking during the pandemic, and I joined 4 cycling clubs. On all 4 of the cycling clubs, there's a lot of professionals, including real estate folks and other industry types that I just generally like being around and spending my day with, and the whole bit. Whether it's been road biking or or hiking or whatever it is, I think that people are searching for that sense of connection, and they're finding it within their communities, which is actually a very good and healthy thing, which wasn't really existing to the same tune prior to the pandemic. And there's nowhere to go and eat. There's nowhere to go and drink. All the restaurants are either shut or closed or gone for good. It'll come back. We all know that it's going to come back. It's going to take time. It's going to take time for businesses to feel confident that they want to reinvest their money into those industries. It's going to take time for people to feel comfortable being around other people as well. And people are getting comfortable in their current environments. I mean, if you've moved, it's going to be tougher for you to leave. And people are searching. I mean, homes are being built now with 2 offices to accommodate multiple professionals that are living in the homes, and people are searching for smaller office spaces and the suburban markets. From my understanding, I haven't been this close to it over the last while, but I understand that everyone is coming up with suburban office strategies. They may not be taking more space, they might be giving more space back downtown, but they are looking for alternates in order to keep their staffing happy, recognizing the fact that that work from home is going to exist in some shape or form for some time and period for the future. So I don't know if that's answered the question, but I think all those things in combination with a lot of those big fundamental pushes, whether it's infrastructure investment, transit investment, immigration, policy, so they're all kind of moving into a direction that points to a stronger region and stronger growth for us all, which is great.
I've got one more on investment. Then we're talking about capital raise and deployment. Okay, so Daniel, the last question on investment, I promise, and then we're going to move on. You've got the beautiful mind whiteboard that you referenced. Let's say we're just ignoring all that. Chalkboard. Sorry, yes, old school. Chalkboard. Let's say that we're just going to ignore all that, and we're going to ignore the last 20 minutes of us asking you about why you believe you're going to make some money. What's the target yield on your year 1, year 3? What are you looking to generate for your investors here?
A great question. It's funny. I would say my rule of thumb when I started out in the business was you had to build to 150 basis points over the cap rate. That was like the standard. There were tons of opportunities that were out there. We were constantly looking at new deals, but in different kind of. But you always had to be 150 basis points, and then it starts to just compress over time. Your capital players in the markets made it obviously a lot more challenging in the development space, particularly if you're in all asset classes right now. I mean, I would say that I'd say general rule of thumb. I mean, I think developers aren't willing to do much, under a 20% plus IRR. I mean, I think that's generally an accepted litmus test, I'd say. And then for investors would be, and they're taking on the lion's share of the risk. Obviously, they're finding the deal, they're cultivating it, they're overseeing it, they're driving it home, and the whole bit. And then I'd say, the investors are usually something in the teens. I don't know, it could be in the mid-teens, high teens, something like that, depending where the overall project performs.
Daniel, Adam promised last investment question, so let's move on to capital deployment, if that's okay. It goes without saying, this is the most liquid, market we've seen in commercial real estate in pretty much everybody's lifetime. No matter how old you are, there's just so much money going around on the equity side, the debt side, just everywhere. how are you, and you've seen it, of course, working at Dream, and I know you're only a month in, so maybe you haven't been in any sort of positions where you're bidding yet, but what is that strategy, right? How do you go about finding those opportunities? I mean, you talked about a sort of a 20% IRR, and I know that's just a general number, but that's tough. If everybody's chasing 20% and somebody decides 18 and somebody decides 15, you're going to lose out. So what is that strategy for you?
Yeah, I would say, for us, I think we are going to be playing in a space where we're looking at initially larger residential land development and housing plays.
Sorry, Dana. I'm not going to hold you to it, but quote: are you talking $5 million, 500?
It'd be north of that. Yeah. Somewhere in between that. Somewhere in between those two. Somewhere in between those two numbers, I'd say. And I'd say that the players that are in that space are, there's a ton of them, and then both on the capital side there aren't. You have to understand it as well. So I think that we're uniquely positioned to both source and to also provide advisory for such accordingly.
Let's talk as well about debt, because that is a component of your business, and obviously there's a different yield expectation there. But what do you envision for your deployment of debt in your enterprise?
I'd say that, debt I'd say that debt, there's probably a lot more by way of benchmarks on the debt side. I mean, if you're doing, land loans and mezz and bridges and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I think there's a lot of precedents that are out in the market and the whole bit. Anything that we do really just has to be complementary to the group, and we're picking and choosing where we deploy and how we deploy accordingly, and with whom, really, at the end of the day. So that probably doesn't give you much. Debt is going to be more of a secondary focus to us.
Okay, it's meant to lead to projects that you want to be involved with, not its own standalone.
That's right. Correct.
Okay. And then for the projects that you would be taking on for your use of debt as opposed to deploying debt, what's your debt strategy as a user rather than a lender?
Why are you asking, Adam? Why do you care?
Do you know someone?
Believe it or not, yeah, I know a couple of good guys. One's got a beard and the other one's clean shaven. You should.
Yeah. I heard they're great. Look, I think, I think, again, coming back to it, the deal sizes are getting bigger and bigger, and they're getting riskier from a construction perspective as well. So I think there's always going to be opportunity to have multiple sources of capital.
You were supposed to say First National only, no other lenders. There you go to. Yeah, single source.
Single source. That's it. Single source. Exactly.
While we're still on the topic of capital raise, who are you looking to? What's the profile of your investors? The people that see value in this and want to plug in somewhere between $5 and $500 million.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're speaking to a lot of institutions. I mean, the institutions typically haven't been heavily involved, I'd say, in the residential development space. I mean, obviously, the yield is obviously not there, but the reception has been pretty good right off the bat. I think that's going to be kind of our main clients that we're going to be looking to do work with. So I think we want to try to be in a position where we can be generating the opportunities that I just don't think it would be on their radar. And I think that we're pretty uniquely positioned to be able to generate those opportunities. So yeah, I think you may see the institutions playing more in our space, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a yield perspective, you're likely to find more outside of downtown core, and then just from a risk management perspective, the old adage of not having all your eggs in one basket, it could be a good counterbalance in a lot of larger portfolios to have exposure to what you're offering.
Yeah. You'll have look at if let's say that you're building out a community with 1,000 lots. I mean, those thousand rooftops are going to inevitably, at some point through your master plan, also have early stages of multifamily rental, and then you're already in the land market, so you're going to come across industrial and so on and so forth. So so I think that would, if I was on the institutional side, I think that recognition is probably something that's going to be attractive. They may have buckets of capital which are specific to growth, to some kind of growth development for sales strategy, but then also understanding our group and our MO maybe it would be something that I think would be appealing to be able to look to the future on as well.
We've talked about the decision to start your own business. We talked about the investment thesis in depth. We talked about capital raise. We talked about who's going to be the investors. So you're here, it's happening. What's the actual operation of the company look like over the next, to 2 years? What's the growth projections? What kind of team do you plan on building? The nuts and bolts of operating a company.
Yeah. That's I think that goes back to kind of what we were chatting about earlier about whether you're going into the institutional side or whether you're going into something that's smaller. With something, I do envision something that's smaller, tighter. I think that people who have been through, who've had real experience on the development side. Like, I don't think that you can be on the equity side for developments unless you've actually sat with planning, unless you've met with the city, unless you've dealt with the constructors, unless you've, dealt with things that have gone sideways and brought them back into line and understanding the risk components. So I think that once we kind of focus in, I think we'll take a staged vertical approach to things and then be looking for the right individuals to lead verticals according whether they're going to be on the equity side and the debt side. And we'll see. I think time will tell in terms of how we separate it, or combine them. But in all, I think we'll be looking for kind of like-minded people who are a little more weathered on the development side and who've seen some stuff that can be good people to watch over capital.
In those early stages of your adventure that you're partaking in, have you had some thoughts, or have you looked inwards on what kind of leader you want to be as the CEO, what kind of culture you want to foster in the group? Maybe just kind of talk about what it's like now to be kind of at the head of an organization. I think you're just a few employees today, but I'm assuming there's a growth trajectory where you're going to have many at one point in the future. And so what is the position? What is the strategy to build a really strong, attractive culture?
Yeah, it's such a great question, such an interesting question. I think I was blessed. I was absolutely blessed when I was at Dream to lead a lot of people in multiple markets across the country and work that's fairly intricate and difficult. So I would say that I'm lonely. If you want to ask me personally, I'm very lonely. It's me and Frank, and basically, we have a few partners, but otherwise, it's much quieter than it was, at the outset. And sorry, when I was at Dream. But look, I think that Dream ingrained in me a sense of purpose and wanting to lead with intention and to do right by people. So I think, to answer your previous question, I think we want to make sure that we're bringing the right people on and then giving people the right opportunities to succeed and to thrive and to live their lives and fulfill their careers with purpose. I think it's something which I recognize for myself and something that I would probably want to pass on to other people that I surround myself with.
I think that's a great note to end on, the leadership view. Great question, Aaron, to end it off, and great answer, Daniel. Before we sign off on this portion of the interview, I want to say thanks a lot for sharing your insight and your story. Very interesting. It'll be super interesting to see what you do with it going forward. I'm sure we'll keep seeing you, running into you, and maybe talking to you about a loan at some point, as Aaron alluded to.
100%. I made notes already to call you on some stuff.
Okay, great. For the Ref Club, thanks for putting this together. It was another great think-in. And with that, we're going to move into the question and answer period.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast After Show, where Aaron and I digest the conversation that just happened. This was a particularly interesting conversation, I thought, because we're looking at an investment thesis that's not aligned with most of the people we speak with. Most people we speak with are urban core, 4 main food groups, which is a formula that works for sure, but you're also not getting yet any sort of premier returns for a lot of that kind of product, especially if you're clipping coupons. But this is interesting. This is looking at a peripheral rim in terms of the investment geography and the investment time horizon too. Like I think that, and not that I want to talk about having somebody back to the podcast in 5 years, because that's a kind of a long time frame to think about. But I would love to catch up with Daniel and speak to him when this company and concept is moved beyond their kind of inception and launch stage, which is where they're at right now.
Yeah, it's really such a, and we talked about it, right? It's scary, but the dream of a lot of real estate professionals to kind of take on that endeavor and go through the exercise of trying to figure it out. All the road bumps he's going to come across, the challenge of raising the capital, finding the capital, hitting those yields. I don't think we asked him exactly but there's probably more sleepless nights than he expected than when he started the whole process.
Yeah, especially coming out of, a large institution like he did. It's a very different lifestyle. Your days would look a lot different, but absolutely respect for picking, an investment thesis and, being a believer in the GTA as a whole. Like obviously he's not targeting the downtown. Immigration, which, that's not exactly a new concept for why investing in Toronto works, but to look at the data that shows that Toronto's sheer size is the shockwave effect is rippling out into these smaller markets. And if you can get in front of it with a sizable amount of capital, you could look pretty sharp, 5-10 years down the road. Everybody's got concepts and ideas, but he's really putting his money where his mouth is and making a major play here. It's very cool. And, and if you're talking about 5 and 10 year time horizons, yes, right now in COVID, obviously immigration is seriously hampered, but by all accounts, we are going to play catch up in that front. Toronto will continue to be a huge success story for immigrants and people that benefit from it from the investment standpoint. And so, yeah, I think that he'll continue to, he'll see success in this, I think.
It's funny. I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, but I was talking to a friend of mine just a couple of days ago who recently bought a house in Toronto. And I think for the regular listeners know I recently bought a house too. And we were kind of, I guess, probably just trying to give each other comfort that you didn't make a bad decision. You're doing the right thing. But the conversation was just surrounding the health of the Toronto the economy, right? And I think that's what he's saying is it's a bit insulated, right? Because you're not relying on any one sector. It's got a robust, obviously, finance, big medical, big tech. There's basically an attraction or a major player in every facet of the economy, the immigration, the migration, the vibrancy of the downtown core. Like there's just always going to be a pulse to the city. So I think that's just what he's saying is that there's always going to be demand to come here. So why not get out ahead of it, find the yield before, those. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is go back 50 years, look at the people that were buying and building in Mississauga. People probably thought, wow, how the hell are you going all the way up to Mississauga? Like no one's ever going to want to live there. Those that were buying, north of Shepherd. What the hell are you doing going north of Shepherd? That's going to be like, that's out in the boonies. Now Shepherd feels like the middle of the city, right? Like you could go another 20 kilometers north and never leave an urban area, right? So it probably makes perfect sense. It's just so hard to see that far out when you're, living in this sort of immediacy world.
Well, Aaron and I both live very close to downtown Toronto, maybe a 20-minute drive. But if you go back far enough, in your land titler registry, you're going to find that was a farm at some point. And it was probably 1920s, 1930s, something like that. It started getting converted to housing. That's one lifetime ago where people would have been farming the land that now people are paying such a premium to be 20 minutes from downtown Toronto. Not that you want to invest in a 80-year time horizon, but it's not that long, and obviously you don't need to wait for the full 80 years to realize it. But I don't think you're going to look too dumb in 20 years buying just the outer periphery of where continues to sprawl.
It's a fine line, right? Like 20 years is probably too long to start deploying capital today to start realizing returns. So where's the sweet spot, right? What's the right time versus the right investment to make the most amount of capital? And that's clearly what Daniel's has figured out, it sounds like.
Well, you mentioned as well, the big factor there, of course, with time horizons is red tape is a big factor. That's a very slow moving cog in the machinery of a growing city. And that will likely that'll be the biggest slowdown to realizing, his returns is just working through that red tape for development. But I mean, all developers deal with it. I don't know how. My patience would wear out to a thin little nub personally, but they all seem to do it. So, I know he can as well. Anyways, Aaron, it's an interesting episode. And we'll say it now. 5 years from now, we'll have him back on and talk about all the realized returns and how that played out. Or maybe 80 years.
Yeah. And how we're such idiots for not investing, right?
Yeah. Well, he's looking for institutional capital. I don't think he wants us to chip in our our paychecks.
He'd take 20. He'd take $20 here and there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. Everything in my wallet. You can have it.
That's your investment fund. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to this episode.
Thank you for listening to the CRE podcast. The information from this broadcast is not to be relied upon as financial investing, professional accounting, or legal advice. First National Financial LP holds Financial Services Commission of Ontario license number 10514 and 11252.